several recently released polls show a resurgence of Republican popularity among voters, as measured by President Trump's approval ratings and the generic congressional ballot. The Real Clear Politics average of polls, for instance, currently shows the generic congressional ballot advantage for Democrats has dipped to 6.2%, the lowest it has been since May 30th of last year, and down 7 points from the 13-point advantage they had as recently as a month and a half ago. President Trump's job approval rating has increased to 42.3% in the Real Clear Politics average of polls, his highest since May 13th of last year. As Breitbart News reported, the much-hyped blue wave Democrats hoped it would power them to a net gain of 24 seats in the 2018 midterms needed to give them control of the House of Representatives appears to have reached its peak 2 months ago in December. Democrats dismissed the recent trends as temporary rounding errors, pointing to the December victory of Democrat Doug Jones in the Alabama U.S. Senate special election, and this week's special election victory by a Democrat in a Missouri state legislative district that usually is reliably Republican as true indicators of what they call voter fatigue with President Trump and his policies. Democrats are shrugging off a series of favorable polls and news cycles for Republicans, arguing it has done little if anything to change the trajectory of a midterm election year they believe will end with losses for the GOP, The Hill reported on Wednesday. There's no question and no surprise that Republican numbers are improving. They've surged from miserable to mediocre. But Democrats have massive energy on their side, and this president has a skill for snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, former Representative Steve Israel, DNY, told The Hill. Representative Jerry Connolly, DVA, agreed with his former colleague. It's way too early to be concerned, Connolly told The Hill. You have to look at trend lines, not the vicissitudes of today's headline affecting 48-hour approval ratings or polling. And I think those trend lines tell you that the enthusiasm is on the Democratic side. That has not abated, Connolly added. A Morning Consult poll released Wednesday belies the latest Democrat talking points on current public opinion. In the poll of 1,993 registered voters conducted this past Saturday and Sunday, February 3rd and 4th, 4 days after President Trump delivered his well-received January 30th State of the Union speech, 45% of respondents approve of the job the president is doing, while 51% disapprove. The 6% net disapproval is one of the lowest the president has seen since he was inaugurated on January 20, 2017. The current Real Clear Politics average of polls places Trump's disapproval ratings somewhat higher, at 53.9%, for a net negative approval rating of 11.6%. As a point of comparison, President Obama's job approval rating at the same point in his administration, February 7, 2010, was 48.4%, and his disapproval rating was 46.9%, a net positive approval rating of 1.5%. But back in 2010, President Obama's approval ratings were heading down, while in 2018, President Trump's approval ratings are heading up. On January 27, 2009, the week of his inauguration, President Obama had a stratospheric net positive approval rating of 43.3%, 63.3% approval, and only 20% disapproval. A little over a year into his administration, that he had lost over 40% of that net positive approval, and the losses continued for the balance of the midterm election year. By November 5, 2010, President Obama's net approval rating had dipped into negative territory. Only 45.1% approved of his job, while 49.9% disapproved, a negative job approval rating of 4.8%. Not surprisingly, that same week, in the 2010 midterm elections, Democrats lost control of the House of Representatives to the Republicans, with a net loss of 63 seats. In contrast, President Trump has gained 10 points in his job approval ratings in the past month and a half. On December 16, 2017, his net negative job approval ratings peaked at 21%, 58.1% negative, and only 37.1% positive. Virtually every recent poll, including one from Monmouth University conducted between January 28 and January 30, the majority of which was completed prior to the President's State of the Union address, point to an upswing in Republican popularity, and particularly for President Trump. The public's perception of the Trump administration's landmark tax overhaul is rapidly becoming more positive and more realistic, as Breitbart News reported last week. Americans are now evenly divided over tax reform, with 44% saying they approve and 44% saying they disapprove, according to the latest Monmouth University poll. In December, just 25% approved and 47% disapproved. It was a point Washington Post reporter Aaron Blake acknowledged in a recent tweet. The more recent Morning Consult poll indicates that President Trump's support among his base has solidified, as attitudes about the Russia investigation have polarized. The entire debate over the Russia investigation has become muddled, and voters are dividing along partisan lines, Politico reported. Morning Consult actually conducted two separate surveys. One, their regular weekly survey, which was conducted between February 1 and February 4 with questions that did not measure reaction to the release of the House intelligence memo, which documented the FBI's failure to inform a FISA court judge about the true origins of the Steele dossier that was the basis for their warrant request to spy on Carter Page, and one conducted after the memo's release between February 3 and February 4. Politico described those differences. In the initial survey, with interviews conducted both before and after the memo's release last Friday, 39% of voters say the investigation into Russia's influence has been handled very or somewhat fairly. But 35% say it hasn't been handled fairly, either not too fairly or not fairly at all. More than a quarter of voters, 26%, have no opinion. Ambivalence toward the investigation extends to the man running it, despite a sterling military and law enforcement career, staying out of the public eye during this investigation. Nearly as many voters have an unfavorable opinion of Special Counsel Robert Mueller, 30%, as view Mueller favorably, 32%. Republican skepticism has grown around the Russia probe and Special Counsel Robert Mueller, said Morning Consult co-founder and Chief Research Officer Kyle Drop. Only 22% of Republicans have a favorable opinion of Robert Mueller, and just 25% say the investigation has been handled fairly. The solidification of views about President Trump along partisan lines documented by the Morning Consult poll accentuates that the outcome of the 2018 midterm congressional elections will likely be determined by which party does a more effective job of getting their base to the polls.
Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe our channel for more news videos daily and for what's viral today. Also turn on post notifications and don't miss nothing. A thumbs up really makes me blessed.